Hello again! As you may or may not know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and this is the first daily blob in a hell of a long time. I do believe it has been like a year and a half since I did a daily blob. Feeling pretty good here, feeling pretty good being back in the captain's chair, doing a blob again. I think we've got a good little thing to run with for a little while. So, as you may not know, I actually have been creating a constant stream of videos since February, but I've been doing it over at failnormal.com. I've been looking for a new format, a new way of doing things, and what I've found in the YouTube world is it's best not to experiment on your main channel. If you experiment on your main channel, you might run into a Chris Pirillo problem, and I really don't want that, right? So Chris Pirillo, he was doing all those tech videos for a long time. I remember when he had just a zillion more subscribers than I did. I looked up at all the subscribers he had, and now he's way down below me. And the reason is because everybody subscribed to his channel for the tech content, and then when he started doing vlogs, people weren't so interested, right? He's the only channel I've seen that puts out a constant stream of videos, but still basically has like negative subscriber growth. And so you got to be careful about that in the YouTube world, because you think, hey, this is a great idea, I'm going to do something amazing. And then people just don't like it. People like literally just hate it. I kind of had that problem back. I did virtual booth crawls. So I'd go to CES or I'd go to Interop or I'd go to one of these events. It cost me a crap ton of money to go to those events. And so I figured I would go to every stall that was interesting and do a two or 3 minute video about that stall. So, this is encrypted external hard drives, this is a robot, X, Y, or Z. I thought this was great. Because I could upload it in real time since they were short videos, right? Oh, it was brutal. I went through all this work. I did all this work. I did all this effort. I uploaded all these videos. And then people said, "Why are you spamming our feed, Eli? Why are you spamming our feed?" Like, mother fudder. I'm working like 16 hours a day to get this content up to you folks in damn near real time. And my thanks is being told I'm spamming your feed. Right. So that's why I've been over on Fail Normal, because I've been experimenting with a lot of things on Fail Normal. I tried a whole Let's Live thing for a while. I actually like the Let's Live thing on a conceptual basis. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to do a lot of, though. And like Let's Live is where I took the video camera and I held it in my hand, pointed outwards, as I walked through areas. So I'd walk through forests, or I walk through Cambodia, walk through Thailand, through all kinds of cool things. And again, conceptually, that was really cool. But then just doing that day after day after day was a bit of a pain in the ass. So I tried Let's Lives, I tried this, I tried that, I tried the other thing. And basically what I settled upon was a 2-hour daily talk show with essentially 3 parts. One part is where I talk about a topical concept of the day. One part is where I talk about news of the day. And one part is where I respond to comments. And then I sat there and I looked at that and I went, You know what that kind of reminds me of? You know what that looks a lot like? That looks like Daily Blob version 2.0, right? Because before I was doing the daily blobs, I did like 300 daily blobs. The issue I ran into is I did the daily blobs live. And so doing live video sucks, right? For a lot of reasons, right? Because your upload bandwidth speed has to be good enough. Your encryption, your encoding software and all that has to work properly. Your computer has to work properly. You've got all these other gadgets and stuff. So it's just a little bit of a logistical nightmare from a technical standpoint. And then also when you're doing a live video show every day, the idea is that you need to do it at a specific time. It really doesn't matter what time it is, honestly, but you got to pick a time. And so like when I was doing the daily blog before, it was 3 to 5. Problem with that being, again, all the technical stuff, and then that means I have to be there 3 to 5, Monday through Friday, which is a real pain in the ass. So we got a lot of issues that way. And so what I found, being over on Failed Normal and experimenting with the 2-hour talk show, is that people basically just want the 2-hour talk show. They don't really care about it being live. So by pre-recording the talk show and simply having it be published at 6 a.m. in the morning, every day, then people get their 2-hour daily talk show I get the flexibility basically to tape it whenever the hell I want. Don't have to worry about all that the technical logistical crap going on. So it's good all the way around. And beyond that, like what I've found with the Daily Talk Show is it gets published daily, but it gets published Monday through Friday. So one of the things that I've found, like I'm actually taping this on Sunday. So the thing is what I can do is I can tape 7 days in a row, and then that gives me a 2-day backlog. Right, so like Fail Normal right now actually has 3 videos that'll drop even after I've stopped doing it, because those were in the backlog, those were in the queue. So what I can do here is basically I can do 7 days of video, and then I can go back to the Monday or Friday routine. If I'm tired one day, if I'm sick one day, if there's issues one day, then you know, I've got that nice little backlog, and so that works out well. The other thing that I really realized is a lot of times as a technology professional, you overcomplicate things. This is a big problem with technology professionals. You overcomplicate things because you want to do the coolest technical stuff possible, right? So when I did the Daily Blog before, I had multi-camera, so I had multiple cameras, and I had the input source for my computer and all that kind of stuff. I'd used multicam in the past, and then I went and I got like this $1,000 ATEM, Blackmagic ATEM television studio. Good product. Good thumbs up on the product. Good product. But again, you get into all this complicated stuff to be able to do all this complicated stuff, and then what you find out is basically people use you as a radio show. People use you as a radio show and just have you on in the background, so it doesn't really matter even what is on the screen. Like, you could be looking at a blank screen almost. And so that's the other thing with this, is that makes everything so much easier, right? Because before, that was my issue before. Like when I wanted to travel, you know, when I would go to an event or something like that, that means I'd have to take all the equipment with me. Then I'd have to worry about, you know, being able to do the live stream at a certain time period. There was all this stuff involved, right? Now, if I just do the 2-hour talk show, where literally the only thing I need is my camera with his microphone on top, and pull out the card and shove it in my MacBook Pro and upload it at the end, everything works out great. The other thing is, again, with technology, things moving ahead, things moving forward, you know, with the tethering stuff has gotten a lot better now. And so I have Verizon. So one thing with my life now is I'm living a very, very footloose and fancy free life. I'm here one day and there the other. Again, like I say, in the past 3 months, we spent 3 weeks in Southeast Asia going through Thailand and Cambodia. Then we came back, hopped in a travel trailer, went up to Pennsylvania, then down to Shenandoah, then down to Smoky Mountain National Park, and then next week, I think, we're going off to the Adirondacks and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the cool things is with the tethering technology now, the process that I figured out how to do using Fail Normal is, so when I do these videos normally, I tape them in 1080p 60 frames per second. Mwah! It looks as if the spaghetti monster himself draws the images on the screen. I just love 1080p 60 frames per second. But it creates 24 gig. A 2-hour movie is 24 gigs. Really big. But what I found is I can use compressor, compress that 24 gig file down to a 1 gig file for a 2-hour video, and then I can use my tethering to be able to upload that literally anywhere in the country. So like when I was on Fail Normal, I was in the middle of the Laurel Highlands in Pennsylvania, was able to upload content. I was in the middle of Shenandoah National Forest, was able to upload content. I was down at Smoky Mountains, was able to upload content. So since I use Verizon, I pay $100 a month for a 18 gig plan. Costs me anywhere between $7.50 to $15 per extra gig. That's a reasonable thing. That's a reasonable thing. So I figured out all of this stuff and how to do it. So this way, I can do a 2-hour daily show that provides you folks, I think, a pretty good product, a relatively good product, and I can continuously do it. So that's what I've been doing over at Fail Normal. It's basically experimenting, playing with all these things, figuring out how things work and what exactly I want to do, so that I can come back here and we can rock and we can roll. I'm mad at Barnacules right now. I'm getting my little competition thing. Like, you know, I stepped back from Eli the computer guy, and I don't know what it is. You get into these like stupid competitions with people, but like Barnacules, right? So Barnacules used to be below me, and then Barnacules had the same number of subscribers I did, and then like Barnacules got more subscribers than I did. But then I started doing some more videos on Eli the computer guy, so I got more subscribers than he did. And now I'm like looking, Mutter. He's like at 740 and I'm like 712. Actually, it might be like 716 now. I'm like, no, this can't work out. This can't work out. I gotta get more subscribers than Barnacules. He's my new competitor. That is one lesson. That's one of the lessons that I found in life is friendly competition. Friendly competition is like when I did weight loss in the past or anything like where you have a goal. Like I'd like to get that million. I don't know. I'd like the gold play button. My wife's, I joke that the reason I'm going for the gold play button is because my wife wants it. But, I do have to say that I would like the gold play button. And so if you find somebody to be like a friendly competition with, you just find that person and be like, I'm going to beat that guy. I'm going to beat that guy. And you always find somebody relatively equal to you. Like, I'm not going to beat Linus. At least for a little while. Linus, I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you, Linus. But Linus right now, he's well out of my sphere. But Barnacules is somebody that I feel I can compete with. So right now we're going to be competing with Barnacules and hopefully try to get to that million, that gold play button mark. And see how it goes. But that's the thing. And that is one of those big lessons in life I'd have you folks think about it's one of the lessons I learned the horribly hard way. So many of the lessons that I give you, the reason that I speak so truthfully is because I learned the lesson the hard way. And one of the big lessons I learned in business, and even like professionally and in life, is the value of labs, the lab environment, right? So especially in the tech world, you have that lab environment. So if you want to set up a virtualized, you want to set up some kind of, who the hell knows, MySQL cluster or something else, the first thing you do is you go into your lab environment, you play with it, break with it, do all the stuff there, and then once you know what you're really doing, then you go into the production world. And I feel like the lab environment is just a good idea for so many professions. That's one reason I really suggest people, especially when you're young, that you go and volunteer places. Because things like leadership skills are going to be absolutely and utterly valuable to you going ahead in your career. Again, even if you think you're just going to be ankle deep in motherboards and all that your entire career, you're not. At some point, whether it's 10 years from now or 20 years from now, you're going to go into management, you're going to go into leadership, right? So the problem is the first time you go into leadership, it sucks, man. It sucks. People are weird. People are just fucking weird, right? And so you don't want to be learning all the leadership lessons the first time. The first time your paycheck depends on it, right? The first time you are in charge of a team is not the first time that you actually want to be dealing with learning all this leadership stuff. And so that's one of the things I say with like nonprofit organizations or volunteer things is, if you go out and you volunteer to run a bake sale, now you might be like, what the hell does that have to do with technology? But again, not so much in the technology world doesn't have a damn thing to do with technology, right? You volunteer to go do with a bake sale, and then you're going to have to figure out, okay, if we're going to do the bake sale, how many tables are we going to need? Where are we going to put the bake sale? Do we have permission to do the bake sale at that time? Are people going to come to the bake sale? Who is going to bake for us? How can I verify that the person that says that they're going to bake 500 cookies are going to bake 500 cookies and not 5? Right, all of those things. And again, I always talk about that. Like that's what so many technology noobs don't understand about the technology profession. Is basically the higher up you go in the technology world, it's the exact same process, just on a far more expensive scale, right? When you're thinking about swapping out a motherboard, or whether or not it's worth replacing a motherboard, or whether you should just go and buy a new computer, I mean, that is the exact same thought process when you walk into a data center and you've got 5 racks of servers and there's some kind of issue. You're like, okay, these servers are 5 years old. Again, it's just an expense. You as a noob think, is it worth spending $500 on a new PC? You as an IT director or CIO go, is it worth $5 million for a new cluster of servers? Exact same thought process. And so the more you go out there and the more you play, like I say, in these lab environments, the better you will do in life. Again, that's the big problem that I find with most modern technology professionals is there's a myth. We're going to talk about that today with the whole idea of the death of the IT profession. There's this myth that has been created about what successful technology IT professionals look like. And it doesn't necessarily have a whole hell of a lot to do with reality. Again, there's this whole myth of the programmer that sits in a dark room 24 hours a day and gets pizza and beer delivered to them, and his only entertainment is online porn, but they just sit in that little room. And so what a lot of like new tech people try to do is they're like, oh, that must be the way to success. I have to learn how to sit in a little dark room for 20 hours a day. You're like, that looks really good in the movies. And again, that's one of the problems we have in the tech field. That's one of the problems we have in the IT field. Is so many people that want to get into this profession get so many their ideas about this profession from movies. They're not actually, they haven't actually gone into a server room. They haven't been in a data center. They don't know system architects and all that kind of stuff. And so they have this idea from watching movies, and these movies just, they're movies. They're movies, right? You know, every time I watch a hacking movie, it's just so brutally horrible. It's just like, oh, I remember watching Hackers? Was it Hackers? Like the hacking movie from like the 90s. And it was so funny because I was a computer person then. And the first time I watched the hacking movie, Hackers, and had Angelina Jolie back when she was a kid and all that kind of stuff. But it was so funny because they're on like 56K connections, maybe dial-up connections, and then they're typing back and forth. And I remember watching it, and they had the graphics where the person's words were like in flames on the screen, and I remember looking at that going, they don't have the bandwidth for that crap. Even if they know how to do that, can you imagine the bandwidth requirements of downloading flaming fonts like back in like 1997 or whatever on a 56K modem? Maybe, but that's what people have this idea, like that's what it is, and you're like, that's just not. Right. So the big thing for a lot of you folks is go out there and play, like I say, in these lab environments. Again, that's where I say you should work with nonprofit organizations or really companies that are really cheap or really new. Even in the startup world. Again, I give the startup world a lot of shit, which it deserves, just across the board. I'm not going to stop giving a shit. But again, you always got to look at the value. There's gold somewhere. There's gold somewhere. That's what a business person does. You find the gold. And so if you look at the startup environment, so if you're in New York or if you're in Baltimore or Washington, D.C. or Austin, any place with a startup ecosystem, the thing is that you have to understand is most of those people in the startup ecosystem have no fucking clue what they're doing. Their heads are squarely up their asses. But, here's the but. Many of them do get money. And many of them are trying to create new and novel products in the technology world. Most of them are going to fail miserably. But here's the thing, right? If you go there and you find interesting startups that are doing interesting things in areas where you need experience, you can go in there. You can be their tech person. You can work on their project to develop whatever the hell it is they're developing. And here's the thing, when it all implodes, because it's gonna implode, you can then put that on your resume. I was the lead developer for this startup. And then when they say, well, you go for a job interview or whatever, explain this. Be like, oh, these are all the things you did. And it's like, oh, well, why aren't you with the startup? The financial people, they couldn't get funding. Oh, it makes sense. But the thing is, like, especially like with a lot of these startups, so many startups nowadays, when they're creating their infrastructure, it's all cloud infrastructure anymore, right? And so it's APIs and it's all these cloud and all that cloud stuff. And so if you learn how to create scripts and software that are able to connect to multiple different cloud infrastructures, is then able to put something out. That's a very valuable skill. And the thing is, like, if you work for a real company and you don't have that skill yet, they're not going to let you touch it, most likely, right? If you work for T. Rowe Price, or if you work for, I don't know, some big company, and they have a new big project like that, and you have no experience in that area, they're not going to let you touch it. On the other hand, if you've been working with 3 or 4 or 5 startups and you've helped build, then you can go to them and say, look, I've already built this stuff. It already works. I can have experience. And then again, like I say, with the startup world, if that startup infrastructure blows up, the founders probably won't even know. Oh no, it's so horrible. It is so. I have seen startup companies with like funding, been through accelerators and the whole nine yards, and you're just still sitting there with like basic functionality doesn't work. Like I remember this one where it really was like they had been through accelerator, they got funding, they've been working on this thing for years, and then we sat down and I was supposed to be part of this this group to help them, basically revive. It was supposed to be polishing. It was supposed to be polishing the software product, and I swear to you, like the username just said like $ username where the username was supposed to be. There was like all this functionality. You would click a button, and it just didn't do anything at all. And at this point, they had worked on this thing for years. They had gone through accelerator. They had gotten funding. They were talking about putting this thing out to market, and it's like, your basic functionality doesn't work. Like, we're supposed to be here arguing about should it be a 14 font or an 18 font, or which font do you use, or oh, I don't know, that color is a little hard in the eyes. This is the point you should be tweaking CSS, not major parts of the code, right? But again, that's why you go out and you deal with those folks, because it can get you a lot of experience. So anyways, yeah, we're in about 21 minutes now. Again, anybody that has not watched one of my shows before, the big thing to understand about me doing the daily blobs is the entire point of the daily blob is to do a 2-hour talk show. I get a lot of people on here that say, hey, if you use notes, if you use editing processes, you could really make this a lot shorter. What the fuck's the point of that? That's literally the exact opposite of what I want to do. Like, the entire point of this show is to be 2 hours long. So again, anybody that's actually watching this thing, that is just something to keep in your head. That is my skill. That is my gimmick, as they say, to sit here and blather away the idea this is a 2-hour talk show that you just have going on in the background. Again, it's kind of like I say, it's Rush Limbaugh of the tech world. I know everybody cringes whenever I say Rush Limbaugh, but everybody knows who Rush Limbaugh is. That's the hard part. Like whenever you do like an elevator pitch, is like coming up with the I am the X of Y. And so again, like most people say, oh, I'm like Airbnb for, or I'm like Uber for, I'm like this for, and that's a problem. Like in the talk show or in the radio talk show world. How many radio talk show people aren't assholes? Like, I'm the Glenn Beck, no. I'm the Rush Limbaugh, no. Like, all the big, like, radio talk show people that everybody knows, most of the progressives and liberals really don't like. I remember that before. I used to say that a lot. It's like, I'm like the Rush Limbaugh of technology. Like, people would just, like, cringe. I'm like, come on, guys. His name, he is not Voldemort. He is not Voldemort. We can say his name. I don't agree with a lot of the things he says, but he's not Voldemort. We can say this guy's name. But it is funny, and just something to think about. Again, startup business, elevator pitches, is you don't know how cringeworthy simply saying the name like Glenn Beck, or Bill O'Reilly, or Rush Limbaugh is. Like if I say I'm the Rush Limbaugh of tech. Again, I don't think anything about it. I mean, Rush Limbaugh. Holy hell! I may fucking disagree with that boy on a lot of things. But you can't argue with his success. I mean, like AM rate, like how the hell do you become that successful on AM radio? I mean, like an AM radio blowhard. And, like, presidential candidates care what he says. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, from a business standpoint, right? Whatever you think about it socially. But again, that's one of the things you run into. Is because, again, if I say, like, the people that you may be very similar to, there may be folks that really, really, really just hate that name. Yeah. I am the Obama of... No, I am the Hillary Clinton. Yeah, that would be bad. But anyways, yeah, one of those random things. But like I say, I'm just here blathering away for about 2 hours. And the other thing, just before I get into the main subject, I should have lost all the 14-year-olds at this point. But I do have to say, I am well renowned for using my ban hammer liberally. And here's the thing, as far as comments and all that stuff is concerned, just so you know now going forward, and again, any folks that decide to give me crap, is that I don't believe that the comment sections for my videos is a place for trolls. Just don't tolerate it. Just don't tolerate it. I don't even like calling them trolls. I just like calling them trash. I actually don't like calling them anything. They just are trash. So you get a lot of folks that get into the comment section, especially on something when I say computer repair is dead or the IT industry is dying or dead. And they go in there and they say, you're an idiot, you're stupid, another video on YouTube, whatever. And basically, so you know, is anytime you use any of like the cardinal bad words, I'd say, Jew, N-word, any of that kind of stuff, you're going to get banned absolutely immediately. I don't tolerate that stuff on my channel at all. Don't care. Don't tolerate it. If you get personally insulting towards either me or towards any other commenter, I generally ban it outright. The only time they don't ban the people outright is sometimes you get into this whole little flame war where it actually started not too bad in the beginning, and then by the time I get to the comment section, it's like 50 comments down, they're all at each other's throats. So at that point, I may just delete the entire comment chain. But the other thing, like personally insulting, you are stupid, you are a piece of crap, blah blah blah. Again, towards anybody, because that's not, I don't accept that kind of stuff on my channel. What about the First Amendment? What about it? What about free speech? What about it? You have my full permission to create your own YouTube channel completely and utterly dedicated to telling the world that Eli is a complete utter moron. That is freedom of speech. That is First Amendment. My comment section isn't, right? Again, as I say, there are no takedown notices against the drunken peasants for calling me a fart bubble. They watched 5 minutes of one of my videos, said a lot of stupid things, and then called me a fart bubble. Again, I wish it had been a little more well thought out, but that was it. That is First Amendment. On their channel, they called me a fart bubble. If you come to my channel and call me a fart bubble in the comment sections, you go away. And basically, that's trying to keep the conversation and the communication clean and cordial and all that kind of stuff. Again, I target professionals, I target adults. And when you keep a rather clean comment stream, it makes it a lot easier to actually communicate with the real users that care about the material, right? Because again, I'm just one person, and if you've never dealt with a real YouTube comment stream, right? I mean, you get thousands of comments a day, especially if you don't use the ban hammer. So trying to wade through all of those and communicate with anybody when you don't ban the trash just doesn't work at all. I mean, there's just too many people to deal with. So one of the things is by going and, again, just the trash and the garbage and the 14-year-olds that don't have pubes. Yeah, you just get rid of all those folks. And then you have a decent comment stream that you can actually deal with. And then you can communicate with the people on the stream, can communicate with each other, and it actually makes it something useful. I think that's a problem with the trash, is that they've turned what should be a very useful tool into something that's just essentially worthless. And so that's where on my comment section, again, don't use the N-word. Yeah, again, you know, any adult over 30 years old understands. You know, don't use the big, huge, nasty words, and don't personally insult anybody. Again, and you can write a frickin' book on why I'm wrong. He's wrong here and here and here and here and here and here and here, as long as you don't say you are an idiot. Let me explain why you're wrong. But anyways, so you know. So the IT industry, I don't know, is the IT industry, I'd say the IT profession is dying. You're like, well, what's the difference there? And here's one of the things to think about. If you're coming into the tech world, the technology world, is one of the biggest problems you run into is semantics. On Phil Normal, my videos there, I've been talking a lot about the whole idea of the Socratic argument. So Plato wrote about Socrates, however many thousands of years ago. And basically, Socrates was a philosopher, theoretically. Not going to get into that whole argument. Socrates theoretically existed, and his method of philosophy was somebody would sit down in front of him, and they would say, Socrates, am I a just king? And Socrates would look at that person and say, well, what do you mean by just? And the person would say, well, means justice. Justice means abiding by justice and being virtuous. And so Socrates would say, well, what is justice? Well, justice is abiding by the laws and this and that and the other thing. And Socrates, well, then what are the laws? And basically the idea with the Socratic method is Socrates really never answered anything. He just kept asking questions and questions and questions and questions and questions until the person sitting down in front of them then came to their own realization. So the king would then realize that he is just, or was not justice. I think it was always on the positive side there. But that was the idea, is that most people, when they say words, and this is an important thing to understand in the tech field, the tech profession is not dying. Oh, look at that. See, the IT profession, I would argue, is dying. Well, Eli, the tech profession, the tech profession isn't dying. But again, it's that whole Socratic method. When you say words, what do those words actually mean? And the problem is, and that's the big problem that I see, especially in the tech world, is when two people say words, that they use the exact same words to explain different concepts, to say different things. So I've talked about the computer repair industry being dead for a long time. And again, I won't back down on that. One of the few people that I know is doing very, very, very successful in computer repair is this guy, Martin Lehner. He runs Orange Computers up in the Yukon. So I think it's Whitehorse up in the Yukon in Canada. Well, here's the thing, right? Because we were talking about this. I'm like, how the hell are you still successful in computer repair? Because I actually met him, I don't know, 9 months ago or whatever. And he said, well, let me show you something. So he had flown down. I was in Seattle at the time. He had flown down. We talked for like 4 hours. And so he was like, okay, let me show you shipping costs to the Yukon. And so he showed me the shipping costs. And so if you order something from Newegg to the Yukon, if you order a hard drive, so he showed me like a 500 gig hard drive for $40. To the Yukon, literally the shipping cost is $40. The shipping cost is literally equal to the cost of the hard drive. Right? He showed me a PC, so a desktop PC. The shipping cost was $200 to the Yukon. So again, that puts some things into a different perspective. Again, there's always going to be some people that can actually be successful at a thing. But again, it's a lot of situational stuff. If you are on the Yukon and it costs $200 just in shipping cost of a product, then doing repair may make more sense. Again, he was talking about up there, they really do have data caps and data usage on landlines, so their local internet connections. And so for them, using cloud services still doesn't make sense. It's not a technological issue, but when you've got a 100 gig cap on a business connection, this is a residential connection, on a business connection, you really do have to think, do you want to be using hosted Exchange and hosted Google Drive and all that kind of stuff? Not because it's not technologically possible, just your overage costs might get ridiculous. But one of the things, like whenever we talk about this, is you do have to understand that a lot of things are situational, what you're talking about. The other issue you run into is I talk about the computer repair industry being dead. And then I get a lot of people, no, Eli, no, you are completely wrong. You are completely wrong. People can still build websites, and people can still, run cable, and people can still, and you're like, but that's not computer repair. Again, I've been a proponent for web design for a long time. I would still argue for it. If you're trying to find an easy way to get into the tech field and be able to make decent money, web development is a way to go. I am 100% gung ho behind web development. But again, web design is not computer repair, right? Swapping hard drives is computer repair. Swapping RAM is computer repair. Eliminating viruses and malware is computer repair. Wipes and reload is computer repair. Data recovery is computer repair. Those things are computer. Web design is it's a different profession. It's like literally it's within the tech world, but it's different. And so I think that's one of the big things you have to be thinking about. Like whenever you're going to be making decisions, is what are people saying? What are the situations? What does one word mean versus another? Because again, a lot of people throw these words out there, like computer repair. Computer repair. You can still have a computer repair company, Eli. Just build websites. You're like, damn it. You people, right? Or like I say, the situational stuff. And the other thing that's important too is when you go out and you talk to people for advice, to make sure that they're self-aware about their situation. So I ran into this where I got lambasted by this numbnut that does cybersecurity, right? So I talk about this with the whole cybersecurity. A lot of people try to go into the cybersecurity field, and as I always say, start as a technology professional first, and then go as your niche in cybersecurity. When you have 5 years experience, go in your niche in cybersecurity. The reason is when you're an 18, 19, 20-year-old, who's going to give you trust? Who's going to give you respect? If you don't understand what data centers look like, if you don't understand how are you going to do a niche of a subject if you don't understand the concept at all? And that is, again, it's basic. I'm talking to everybody. So I'm talking to people in Washington, D.C. I'm talking to people in Rapid City, South Dakota. I'm talking to people in Alaska. Again, talking to all these people. If you have special circumstances, again, special circumstances are what you have to look at. The problem that I run into, too, is a lot of people give advice, but they're not even self-aware enough to realize that their advice might not be good for other people. So I talk about this with cybersecurity a lot. Again, I'll put $1,000 on the table with my recommendations for cybersecurity, for getting in the cybersecurity field. But I had this one person say, Eli, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I got into the cybersecurity field with absolutely no experience, and I'm getting my nephew into it right now. And you're just getting down on the cybersecurity field because you don't know enough about it, and then you should just shut up. And so here's the thing, right? So whenever I get a comment or anything like that, I actually do a little bit of research because, as I say, I could be wrong on things. So when even somebody's a snarky asshole, a lot of times I'll do research. So I researched and I went back and I got to this person's resume. This jackass had 16 year of full-time active duty military service. And at 3 different services, which is really weird. It was like Navy, this, that, and the other. He ended out, 22 years total in the military, reservist or whatever. Had 4 years as some kind of special agent or whatever for one of the military services, and lived in Washington, D.C. So you're talking about somebody 16 years military service, plus reserve service, had been a special agent, living in Washington, D.C., getting into cybersecurity. Right? That is not the same situation as an 18-year-old trying to get into cybersecurity. It's just not the same fucking thing, right? And then being all snotty, be like, oh yeah, well my nephew is training. And so this person had been in cybersecurity or whatever for 8 years at this point. So guess what? Again, still in Washington, D.C., a big hub for all this kind of stuff. So you got all this, you've got 8 years in cybersecurity, so you go to your nephew who's very smart. You can then guide them with what employers in your area needs, and then you can help open doors for them. Right? That is not the same situation as 99% of my viewers, right? If you are in that situation, by all means, go for cybersecurity right off, right? But again, it's not, and that's one of the problems you get to. Like I say, when I talk about these things, is I'm talking to all of you. I'm talking to people that are in DC and Bangladesh and Europe and all these kind of stuff. And so you do have to look at what your situation is, and you also have to look at the people that are giving you advice. Again, if you have a 20-year military veteran that has a security clearance who has been a special agent telling you, oh yeah, I was able to get into cybersecurity with just a certificate or whatever. It wasn't just a certificate that got you there, right? And And so that is something that you really have to think about, because so many people that are getting into the tech field right now, in the IT field right now, they're listening to morons. They don't understand the basic words and the basic concepts of what's going on. People are selling them a load of crap. Because again, right, and this is something to understand with recruiters and with all these institutions, is they get commission when you sign the dotted line. When you sign the dotted line and hand over a check, they get their commission. So if you go to a boot camp, right, if you go to a college or whatever, they get paid because you wrote a check. They do not get paid because you had a successful career. So they will sell you a lot of crap just because it's what gets them paid. And the other thing too, like I say, with the IT world, and I see this a lot in the Baltimore area, is you have a lot of non-technology people that create nonprofits or training institutes or all that kind of stuff for like workforce development. They don't understand technology. They don't understand the industry. They don't understand any of this stuff. What they do understand is that they get 20 asses and 20 seats, that the government or somebody else will give them a grant of $50, $100, $200,000 in order to do workforce development to train those people. Again, and nobody really worries about, again, what they worry about is how many of our students got an A+. What they don't ask is how many of our students in a year have a 401k plan, right? So again, these are some of the things that you really have to be thinking about when you're thinking about, like I say, the tech world. And so basically, what I would say is, again, when I talk about the IT industry dying, is there's a technology industry and then there's the IT industry. So you look at technology, there's the Internet of Things going on, there's software development going on, there's a lot of things going on in the tech world. But really the IT world, most people, when they think of the IT world, it is a very small subset of this. Again, you get into a bit of Socratic argument about where IT stops and other things begins. Again, and that's a problem. Since the boundaries are fuzzy, recruiters and people making money off of you signing checks use that fuzziness, right? Oh no, the IT industry is growing by leaps and bounds, so pay $5,000 for the CCNA. You're like, yeah, no, they need Ruby developers, which I guess, when you think about it, Ruby is an IT career skill set, but CCNA isn't going to teach you how to do Ruby, right? So that's the thing. It's like a foggy thing. But what I would argue is you really look at the boundaries of what most people think IT is, information technology is. The information technology career. This is where we're talking about networking, pretty standard networking. So you got Cisco routers, Cisco switches or switches, routers, wireless access points, bridges, power line devices, line of sight wireless, that kind of stuff. So basically all the networking components that connect either a business, a home, or a campus environment. Right. So if I'm a school teacher and I sit down at my computer in this building, it will be able to connect to the server back in another building, right? So that kind of network infrastructure. Then, as far as systems go, when you're looking at IT, it goes basically to systems administration. So all the kind of computer repair type stuff, fixing computers, maintaining computers, tuning up computers, administering Linux, administering Windows, administering Active Directory, organizational units, forests, domains, all of that kind of stuff. So really, when you think about IT, when most people think about IT, that is what you're looking at. There are other things out there, but again, you have to worry about semantics. So I'll talk about Lewis on this channel quite a bit, because I just like talking about Lewis. Lewis Rossmann is a good guy. He's good peoples, as I would say, and he's one of the only other tech. He's the only tech channel that I actually really subscribe to. So he has good stuff, and most of the time when he talks about things, he's preaching to the choir. Like, I like watching his videos because it's nice to hear other videos and not be called an idiot all the time. Like, look, right? Because he owns a computer repair shop in Manhattan. He has like 4 or 5 employees, 4 employees, 3 employees, I don't know how many employees now. He's got employees, he's been in business for a while, he has a storefront. So I talk about him a good bit just because, when I talk about things, a lot of people get all snotty and snarky, like, you don't know what you're talking about. So I was like, okay, well, just go watch his videos. And I'm sure in one of those videos, he's basically saying the exact same thing I am. So there you go. But about the only thing that we ever got into a quibble about, and this is the thing to be thinking, is so he does, he actually repairs, his big thing is repairing Mac motherboards. So if you have a MacBook Pro or a MacBook, whatever, a lot of times when they die, the motherboard fails, there are actually components on there that you can replace. So instead of replacing a $900 Mac motherboard, you can go in there and replace a 50-cent or $5 or whatever little chip on there. So that's basically what he does. And so in his videos, I don't think he says it this way very much anymore, but in his older videos, he used to talk about it. And one of the words that he used to say is that, look, you can still make money off of computer repair. At which point I was like, ah! Ah! Right? And the reason, again, why I went, it's because what he's doing, I don't think any IT professional would really call it computer repair. Again, that's not dismissing it. That's not downgrading it. It's actually what he does is much harder. He's doing component level motherboard repair. So when you look at the equipment that he uses, when you look at the stuff that he uses, exceedingly few people can actually do that stuff. Like when I had my computer repair shop, I don't think I knew anybody, like anybody in the Baltimore area, if I had wanted to subcontract it out. I don't think I knew anybody that could do exactly what he was doing. So again, that's one of the problems you run into is you hear about these things, but then when you look at what the person is actually doing, he does component level motherboard repair is more, like I say, it's a electronics repair professional. So you could have him go and repair sonar systems or radar systems or MRIs or any of these other high-level electronic devices. And it's more that he's repairing an electronic device that happens to be a Mac versus Mac repair. And again, these are the words that you have to be thinking about with when you're thinking about your profession. So like I say, with the whole IT world and computer repair, like when I talk about computer repair, we're talking about swapping motherboards, we're talking about swapping hard drives, about installing RAM and graphics cards and all that kind of stuff. Not talking about that more complicated thing. And so if you look back at it professionally, so if you can find the IT profession to basically the networking stuff, the sysadmin stuff, the basic computer repair stuff, and you look back at it, back in the day, it was a beautiful time. Oh, it was a beautiful time. It was a time of cotton candy grew on trees and fairy dust was sprinkled. Like you would wake up and there would just be fairy dust dew everywhere. It was a great time. Because basically, if you look back into the late 90s and the early 2000s, what you have to realize is all this technology was completely new. Completely new, right? Windows 95 was a tipping point for the technology world, because basically Windows 95 really made the whole networked computer a usable thing that everybody wanted to use. Now, I had used Windows 3.11 before that. I had used stuff before that. So yes, you could technically use the internet. You know what I'm saying? Yep, you could use it. It wasn't something that everybody wanted. Again, you get to Windows 95, you get to Outlook, you get to web browsers, you get to the internet, and at that time, that actually became something that was very usable that everybody wanted. The big thing at the time, the big paradigm shifting software at the time was email. Like everybody could get email. I mean, back in the day, right? I mean, I'm only 39, almost 40. But I mean, I remember when email was a new argument. I remember being on one of my search and rescue teams, and one of the members was saying that that he didn't have email. He didn't have personal email. So could we just send a newsletter, to his house? And like actually having to have this argument at the time, like, no, we are going to send out a mass email. Mass email we can do. Calling you up on the phone, right? But again, like email was the new thing. So, I mean, so you don't even realize that now. And so the thing is, back then, we were all on 56K connections. A house might have one computer. When you went into a business environment, they had T1 connections at the best. But basically, this was wide open spaces. So if you were CCNA, CCNP, if you were MCSE, if you were A+, Net Plus, if you were any of that, it was just blue skies for a real long time, right? Because the nice part back then was, one, all of these products were new. All these products were brand new, so everybody needed to buy new ones. And then at that time, the refresh cycle was quick. I mean, really, you wanted to refresh your computers and your equipment like every 2 years. Again, going from Windows 95 to Windows 98 really mattered. Going from Windows 98 to Windows 2000 really mattered. Going from Windows XP, going from 2000 to XP really mattered. And then you get to XP, and a lot of people hang out in XP for a long time, like 10 years. And then people go to 7, and a lot of people are on 7, literally fighting against Windows. I mean, like, I can't even tell you about how it used to be. People were like chomping at the bit for any new product. And now you have people on Windows 7 that are literally fighting against Microsoft to keep from upgrading. Anyway, so that was the thing. And so you have, I mean, think about that. The entire first world needed computers for the first time. They needed networking for the first time. So Cat5 cables being run. Again, a lot of people don't realize now, and why so many of us were successful back then, is we were running the first network cable in business buildings that had existed for 50 years. So you go into a business building, and they may have had telephone lines, but none of them had network cabling. So again, I mean, think about that. Every office worker needed a network cable going to their wherever they worked, across the board and across the entire country, even before you get to homes and people that had, a lot of money. So all that network cabling had to be done. And then, like I say, you have all the initial installation. And then after that, there were a lot of big improvements rather quickly. I mean, people start out with like hubs. Again, have you ever dealt with hubs in the real world? Oh, hubs are brutal. Hubs sucked, right? So everybody had all these hubs installed. And then they went from hubs to switches. And then a lot of the networking equipment may have not been the best back then, so you swap out the switches a decent amount. Servers, again, going from NT server, NT 4.0 to 2000 really mattered. I mean, that was a big deal. Going from 2000 to 2003 was a big deal. So you have all this new products coming in. Not only once you get, you get done installing, doing the initial installation of all this equipment, and you're already turning around and planning to do the migration, to do the refresh cycle. Then not only that, but a lot of the crap was quirky as hell, man. Quirky is being nice, right? I remember back, again, dealing with Windows 95 and Windows 98 in the production environment, where we'd have secretaries that just decided there was like these little dancing. They had the dancing baby, but they had other dancing people, basically screensavers. And that was like the big thing at the time. That was like the Facebook of the time, right? I should have the right to download dancing people on my computer. But how many times that would crash the computer? So you're like, what the hell did you, blue screen of death, have to wipe and reload, go through all the time and energy to do that, simply because they installed a dancing whatever person on their computer, and it just died. You ran into issues like AOL. Oh, AOL. I don't know how they didn't get sued for this. AOL pulled the most asinine thing, like one of the most asinine things I've seen in the tech world. So AOL came out with one of their new versions of their software. Well, what happened was when you installed that new version of their software, it disabled all of your other networking on your computer and forced you to go through AOL. Now, if you're a home environment, that probably didn't matter, right? They were just being a little they were just being a little monopolistic. The problem was in the business environment at that time, we had a lot of people that used AOL Messenger and AOL services. So you could use AOL through your LAN, not just through your dial-up connection, but there were a couple of settings you had to do. Well, here's the thing. People would install the AOL stuff on their Windows 95 machine because there wasn't much we could do about it. And then all of a sudden, it would shut them off the network because that's what AOL did. And then you go in there and you have to repair them. So you had all of those problems. So Windows 95, 98 time frame, even with Windows NT, You just had flaky crap problems. You just had, like I say, the old joke, don't look at the computer wrong. Don't look at the computer wrong because it might die, right? Well, the thing is, there's a lot of work there, and there's a lot of money there. I may laugh at it, CEOs may hate it, everybody agrees that it's stupid, but at the end of the day, if your Windows 95 or Windows 98 machine dies, or blue screens of death because you sneeze too loud, well, that's money, and that's time, and that's energy, and that's work. That's work orders that you need to do, right? So then you go forward into like the Windows XP time frame, and again, Windows XP Service Pack 1. That's when we all started getting hit with the broadband was new. So broadband was new to a lot of people. Windows XP was not, just functionally was not built for a broadband world. Like you literally used to be able to drop registry keys into the registry simply by just a link on a website, like auto drop, right? And so all of a sudden, that's when spyware and malware and all that kind of stuff start hammering the computers. And again, we may say it's wrong, we may rail against it, but at the end of the day, it's billable hours, right? If you need to get your computer tuned up every 6 months, hey, guess what? That's money I get to make. So basically, you go through that time period. Again, computers are still getting better and better and better. But then you get to that whole point where it's like, Pentium 4, 3 gigahertz, when you start capping out at what most users need. Right, so before you get to P4 3 gigahertz, again, every 2 years you need to refresh the computer, just because if you didn't, you just had it was horrible. Once you get to about P4 3 gigahertz, especially on Windows XP, it works well enough for most people. It's actually pretty good, right? So you don't have to refresh. You don't have to buy new computers every 2 years and do the migration process and all that kind of stuff because your computer works fine enough. Again, once you start getting into the 2000s with Windows XP, that's when you start having people legitimately keeping their computers for like 10 years because they're fine with it. Again, if you bought a Windows XP computer in 2003, the thought of using it in 2013, reasonable enough. Reasonable. I mean, if all you're doing is email and that kind of stuff, it would work fine for you. So then you start capping out of that. But then as you start going forward with the IT industry as a whole, you just start to see where so much of the work that we provided as IT professionals is functionally disappearing, right? So again, when you're building out infrastructure for the first time, there's a lot of money and there's a lot of opportunity there. But now, 2016, going forward, most of that infrastructure has been built. Right? So you have new buildings where cable has to get run, but all of the old buildings, if cable is going to get run, it's pretty much been run. If you start looking at the equipment nowadays is so much better than it used to be. Again, I use a MacBook Pro. Again, I know there's a lot of Apple haters out there. Just put that to a side for a moment. But this is almost a 3-year-old MacBook Pro. As a computer person, as an IT professional, I can tell you, again, I don't video game, so that's a big thing. I don't video game. But this is a perfectly fine computer. I have, as an IT, as a tech professional, I have zero interest in upgrading this computer. It's got 16 gigs of RAM. It's got a 512 PCI Express solid state drive in there. It's got whatever processor it's got in there. It's got a good enough display for everything that I do. This works lickety-split, absolutely wonderful, absolutely fast after 3 years. I have zero interest in upgrading it. Like literally, if Tim Cook brought me a brand new one, I'd be like, well, because it's you, Tim, I'll take it. But otherwise, I don't care. I have zero interest, right? And so if you look at the stuff going forward, is people don't need computers nearly as often as they used to. The computers that they're using work much better than they used to. All the network installation and all that kind of stuff has already been done. And then beyond that, that users themselves are much more knowledgeable about the equipment, and the equipment is a lot easier to use. Again, when I got my MCSE, so I got my MCSE NT 4.0, right? Back then, you did like 5 main tests and 2 electives. Like literally one of my electives, one of the full tests, I had a whole exam cram book, had to shove it in my head, was all about TCP/IP. Like that was a thing. Like if you had TCP/IP on your resume, woo, right? DNS and DHCP and WINS. Does anybody remember WINS? host files and all that, LM host files, all that kind of stuff was the big thing to know. Well, now you have a whole generation that's grown up with IP address schemes and all that kind of stuff. Not only that, but IP addresses aren't as big a deal as they used to be because NAT, network address translation, has become so successful. So most people, realistically, they drop their cable modem or their FiOS modem in their house. It has DHCP configured, and they can turn all their computers on, and it all works pretty seamlessly from the get-go. And so the issue that you're running into with the IT world is that so many of the jobs that we thought of as IT jobs simply are going away and are not as valuable as they used to be. People know how to use their equipment better, and the issue for a lot of the noobs out there, and this is one of those things that you have to think about, is you now have a competition from old crotchety bastards like me. And this is one of the things, again, Socratic method and thinking about what you're hearing, right? So one of the big sales pitches for the MCSE, right, that they talk about, I still hear it nowadays, is whatever percentage of MCSEs make over $100,000 a year, right? Wow, Eli, look, that's real numbers. They did a survey to come up with that number. Well, the problem that I have with that is I have heard that exact same sales spiel my entire career. So in 1999, they said the exact same thing. Well, what's the difference, Eli? What's the difference? If it was good enough for you folks, it's good enough for me. Well, the difference is, see, if you look back in 1999, 2000, the entire MCSE program hadn't been around very long. The entire concept of every building and every office in the world being networked hadn't been around very long. So if you're 23 years old with 2 years experience making $100,000 a year, that's really impressive. Holy crap, Batman, that's really impressive. So back then, in the 2000s, you had MCSEs and CCNAs doing amazing stuff. Well, here's the thing. That's been 16 years ago. 16 years ago. So, a 23-year-old with 2 years experience making $100,000 a year is very impressive. A 40-year-old with 16 to 20 years experience making $100,000 a year, and not so much. Again, not bad. I mean, it's nothing to sneeze about, but it's not the same. It's not the same discussion. It's not the same deal. And so one of the issues that you're running into is when they talk about MCSEs making $100,000 a year, are they talking about people with 1 year experience, 2 years experience, 5 years experience, or 20 years experience? A 20-year tech veteran. It's not exactly, oh my golly, oh my god, are you? Shocking! It is shocking. That shocks me. I am so surprised. You mean somebody that has 20 years experience in the tech field dealing with corporate infrastructure can make $100,000 a year? Oh, just color me pink. Just color me purple. I'm shocked, right? And so those are some of the things to be thinking about, like I said, when we're talking about the whole IT world. And so if you take that going forward with IPv6 deployments, all this other kind of stuff, you don't have the installations that you used to. The software, the hardware, everything is working better than it used to. Going forward from here, there's only going to be more and more automation. It's a company called Big Switch, very interesting. I talked with them actually a couple of years ago. And the whole idea of like software-defined networking, so software-defined networking is basically you separate all the layers of networking. It's kind of like it's the same thing to networking as cloud computing, virtual computing was, right? So the idea is like with cloud computing, you separate compute from storage, from configurations, and basically you separate all those things out, and then you can deal with them differently. So like with virtual machines in a cluster, you will have a physical server that runs an instance of a server, but the actual data is sitting on the SAN. And so the SAN, the storage area network, deals with all the storage requirements, and then the hypervisors deal with all the compute requirements, and then you may have something security anywhere. Basically, you're separating all those things out. And so Big Switch to software-defined networking, the same deal. So right now, you have network hardware, and on that network hardware is the network operating system. On that network operating system is the configuration that you figured out for that particular box to work with your infrastructure. Their idea is the idea to go to complete commodity networking. And so you have one server, which is a management server for your software-defined networking, where you plug into that how the network should look. And then what happens is then you go into your data center, you go into your network environment, you plug in your networking equipment. That networking equipment then auto-downloads that configuration file, and away you go. And so their idea with the maintenance of networking equipment is to go more to a white box standard, where networking equipment becomes so inexpensive, you don't even troubleshoot it anymore. And I know, like, Lewis is about to lose his mind on the whole e-waste thing here. And again, I don't get into morals or ethics. This is how it is. So their idea is if you have a switch that starts acting weird, it does its own little self-test routine and realizes it's weird, you don't go there and troubleshoot it. You don't figure out what the problem is. You don't figure out if port 1 is causing a problem, if port 2 is causing a problem. You don't figure out, if it's been auto, hard set to 100 or 10 or any of that. What you do is you walk up, you see the little red light on it, you pull the plug out of the back, you take it out of the rack, you plug the new one in, you plug the cables in, you plug it in, it auto downloads, and it's back up and running in about 10 minutes. And so again, that technology is awesome. But you think about it, is in the old days you go there, you troubleshoot it, you look at the configuration screen, you'd see if if it's an auto 10, 100, 1000, maybe the configuration in there got screwed up, or a VLAN got screwed up or something like that. That takes time, that takes energy, that takes manpower. Now you just have somebody go, oh, there's a red light, done. There you go. And that's what we're getting to with the IT world. Again, we start thinking about networking, right? Especially with wireless. So I remember when 802.11b was the new thing. Oh, we've got wireless networking, 802.11b. Oh, that was brutal, right? And so going from 802.11b was just, it was wireless. It was wireless. Yeah, you could get computers to do something wirelessly. Not sure it's networking, but it was something that was wireless, right? But you go from B, that was pretty good. That was whatever it was. Then you get to G. And the G standard was pretty good, but you had a lot of issues. Again, you had the networking equipment, depending on how many users were connecting to a single access point or a single router, you could run into issues, right? Then you go to N. N's a lot better. Doesn't need as much maintenance and loving care as G does, but you still run into some issues. But then you get to AC, 802.11 AC with MIMO, whatever you want to call it, and however many antenna you want per device. And the thing is, when you start working with 802.11 AC, it just works. The standard is amazing. As long as you buy good equipment, the equipment works incredibly well, and you don't have the issues that you ran into before, right? So like my entire house, we run off of a single Apple Airport Extreme, but I have a huge house. Theoretically, if there were actually floors in this house, I guess it would be like a 5,000 square foot house, and I have one Airport Extreme sitting in the bottom corner of it. And that connects every device in this entire house completely fine. Computers and tablets and phones, and we don't have cable. It all goes through a box or whatever, and it all works amazingly well in a big environment. A $200 airport AC wireless works amazing. And again, that thing's 3 years old. I never purposely reboot it. It just does what it's supposed to do. And again, even in home environments, how much do you have to reboot things before? Beyond that, like I say, the equipment and the services are working so much better. I have 50 megabit per second up and down. I have Verizon Business Class. Anybody who's going to get home internet access, I would definitely go for business class service. You always get better if you do business class service. But in 5 years of being here for Verizon, I think I've had to call them out like once or twice. The service just works a lot better than it used to, and it's a huge amount of speed. Again, 50 meg up, 50 meg down. Here where I'm at, you can get 500 meg up, 500 meg down for about $300 a month. Yeah, it's a little bit of money, but again, from a business standpoint, that's not too bad. So you got all that kind of stuff going on. So all that standard IT stuff. Then you have where technology is moving, where technology is migrating to. So we have everything going to the cloud. To the cloud! Right? And then you have to look at what that means from a support perspective. So the big example that I always use is Microsoft Exchange Server. So if you ever dealt with Microsoft Exchange Server back in the day, that was a beast. That was a beast. I had a buddy of mine, she was going to get Microsoft Exchange certified, and it was 2 tests on top of your MCSE, and she said they were the 2 most brutal tests that she ever took. They were like brutal, right? And that's just Exchange Server, nothing else. Like there was a lot to Exchange Server. Exchange Server had their database stores. You had to go in. You had to make sure everything was working properly. All of that kind of stuff, right? So Exchange Server, that was a big deal. And again, if businesses wanted all the Exchange functionality, being able to share calendars, being able to have active sync, does active sync even exist? Anyways, all this kind of stuff, you needed that Exchange Server. Again, which meant you get to install the Exchange Server. You got to maintain the Exchange Server. And there was a lot of labor involved. So even back in 2009, now it's Office 365, but they came out with Hosted Exchange. And Hosted Exchange, you pay $5 a month, and it's so easy a secretary can do it, right? So instead of all this mess you had to worry about before, making sure your IP address wasn't on a spam blacklist, making sure, do you use SMTP relay out? There are all kinds of stuff you had to do, right? Now you go to using Hosted Exchange, and literally all you have is you open up Hosted Exchange, it shows you your account, you do add new account, you type in the information, you give the person a quota, and it's done. And then you go over to their computer and use Outlook, and you type in the server information, the password, and then it's just auto-connected, right? It's that easy. Now again, from a technology standpoint, that's awesome, that's amazing, it's functionality, it's cheap, but where is the labor involved, right? We went from servers and all the maintenance and all that kind of stuff required for servers to this Hosted Exchange thing. Then you go beyond that, and again, how much of our time as IT professionals was dealing with things like corrupt PST files. Oh my golly, PST file. You remember PST files and archiving and all that kind of horse crap? Well, again, you fast forward now, and most of the young folks I know use Gmail. They don't even bother with Hosted Exchange and all that kind of stuff. It's all completely online. And when was the last time you scanned PST to your Gmail account? You don't. It just works. 25 gigs, just working, right? And again, from a technology standpoint, that's amazing. But think about all the work that just left as a technology professional. Before, you had a server to maintain. So when you had that server, that meant one, you had to actually build it, you had to configure it. You had to deal with all the client access licenses to it. You had to make sure it was updated properly. You had to make sure the antivirus was on there properly. If it was an Exchange server, you had to make sure you had whatever the hell, the anti-spam software that we used at the time. You had to make sure that your IP address stayed off of the blacklist, or you created some kind of SMTP relay to be able to send out. You had all those configurations to do. You had to worry about whether the power supply would die. You'd have to worry about whether the motherboard would die. You'd have to worry about all that kind of stuff. Configuring the things on the client computer. You'd have to configure all that stuff on the client computer. And then, if the person's computer died, you had to make sure that, okay, well, the PST files stored on the Exchange server, but all their archive files are maybe stored locally, so you have to make sure that you actually can recover all of that information. All of that is labor hours. All of that is work to be done. Now you go from that to Gmail. Bob at EliTheComputerGuy.com, password, quota, done. If your computer nukes itself, it doesn't matter. Like with my computer right now, like on my MacBook Pro, I don't want to replace it. I genuinely don't want to replace it. But I could take this thing, I could hit it with a sledgehammer, go buy a new MacBook, and none of my data would be lost. None of my data that I care about would be lost. That was not the case back then, right? PST files, this, that, and the other thing, right? So as more things move to the cloud, there's just functionally less work in the IT world that needs to be done. Again, when you look at the networking equipment, even beyond the whole idea of the whole software-defined networking, you're getting more and more of this equipment that has more graphical user interfaces, so it's easier for normal people to use. If you haven't taken a look at Open Mesh for wireless access points, they're really nice. And one of the things that's really nice with them is they've got really nice graphical user interfaces. If you want to pay for it, Meraki's nice. But so much of the new routers, the new switches, the new networking equipment is so much easier functionally to use. Again, you don't need IT people to do it. Again, when you're dealing with when you're dealing with Cisco command line, you need to know what the hell you're doing, because you got to be able to type in those commands exactly. And you have to know the levels of security. Then you have to be able to know the commands. You got to be able to figure all that stuff out, right? You need an IT professional. Now you go to some graphical user interface and you go click, 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 done. Again, one of the things in the IT world too, a lot of people don't think about, is that in the IT world, one of the things that we got paid a lot of money for was dealing with subpar equipment, right? So especially, like say, in the networking world, quality of service and packet prioritization is the big thing. And so what that means is you have different types of traffic going over the network, and so you prioritize. So voice over IP traffic is the highest priority, FTP traffic is the lowest priority. Well, one of the interesting things, I was watching somebody talk about this a few years ago, is where he talked about where QoS is actually a failure, not a feature. And basically his argument is if you have a good network, you don't even need to worry about quality of service. Which may seem like a laugh line, may seem like a joke. Well, isn't that nice? But again, as we go to gigabit per second network, everybody now is on a gig network. 10 gig networks are out there, 40 gig networks are out there, 100 gig networks are out there. It takes a lot. Even on a gig network, you can take a lot to saturate. You get to a 10 gig network, how the hell do you saturate that thing? No matter what you're doing, right? And so you start to run into all these issues where so many of the jobs that we did, they're either gone or they will be gone. Now again, this is where people say, well, what about, the cloud infrastructure? Infrastructure as a service, Eli, IT. Well, the issue with that is when you look at infrastructure as a service, and you look a lot with the DevOps things, I would argue a lot of times ops, it's kind of like, it's like dev, ops, right? So you go out there, you deal with the developers. The developers are using Ruby, the developers are using PHP, the developers are using Python, the developers are using Swift, right? They're developing software. And so basically their software has to be able to connect to the infrastructure. Well, the thing is, if you look at this new cloud-based infrastructure, and a lot of this infrastructure, whether it's APIs or some other kind of call, it really looks more like software development than it looks like any kind of normal administration. And one of the issues that I see with this, and I've seen this before in the tech world, is one of the stories I always talk about is the fight. I was in this one company, and we had this, I liked them both, but they hated each other. And we had the telephone system administrator, and we had the Cisco administrator. And we were migrating to a new building. We were going from an old Avaya telephone system to the new Cisco call manager at that time. And they, oh my God, these people fucking hated each other. I don't know why, they're both good people. I liked them both, but they just hated each other, right? And they were just cats and dogs, just nasty. They would just go after each other, nasty. And so there was one day where the telephone system guy did something stupid with the network. And the person, the woman in charge of the network, just lost her damn mind, started screaming, and he walked away. And then I'm just sitting there doing whatever job I was doing, and I'm like, okay. And she just looked at me. It was so funny, and it really was true. And a good lesson in life is she said, my Cisco people can learn his functions in the Cisco call manager in a week. He has no fucking clue how Cisco works. And it really is one of those things to be thinking about. So basically what she was saying is Cisco call manager, Cisco network, Cisco voice over IP phones. If you look at it, the telephone call routing and all that kind of functionality, while it is its own skill set, for a Cisco person to learn that isn't too bad, isn't too hard. May take a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit harder than she was giving it credit for. But you can fully imagine a CCNP Cisco person being able to learn call routing. Can you imagine an old-time telephone system administrator learning Cisco? Again, not saying it can't happen, but it would take a hell of a lot longer to get a telephone system admin up to being a Cisco admin than would be from a Cisco admin to do voice over IP, and that's how the world changed. And so that's where I look with a lot of the whole development and the whole operations things, is again, you start to look at it. You got the old IT folks, like, well, you're always going to need servers, you're always going to need this, you're always going to need the other thing. But again, as the developers sit there and they start looking at these services, whether it's storage services or security services or whatever the hell, database services, that looks a hell of a lot more like their world than it does the IT world. Again, you know, I screw this up. Is it Aurora? I think it might be Aurora. Right, I think it's Aurora. I think Aurora, Aurora, I do believe is Amazon's MySQL implementation. So MySQL is a database, right? So lots and lots and lots of web software use MySQL. Not going to get into an argument about whether you should or not. They just do, right? Whether they're legacy systems or whatever else. And so if you're dealing with MySQL in a production environment, the thing is you have to create a cluster. You have to deal with replication strategies. You have to deal with all this stuff. If you're running Travelocity, if you're running a big website and it still uses MySQL, you don't want that all running off of one box. Obviously, you create fault tolerance, you create replication strategies, all that kind of stuff. Well, AWS comes out with Aurora, and Aurora is their implementation. You connect your web app to it, and then it just does it. It just does it. 64 terabytes, up to 64 terabyte database, and it just deals with it. You don't have to, because again, if you're dealing with the MySQL cluster, not only are you dealing with all the servers and making sure they're run properly, but you have to worry about power supplies failing, you have to worry about antivirus, you have to worry about updates, you have to worry about security, you have to worry, if you've got however many computers in a MySQL cluster, you have to worry about that. And again, if they then connect, let's say, to a different site, so there's some kind of replication strategy over sites, there's a lot of man hours involved in all that, where IT people come in. Well, now if you take that MySQL cluster and you simply purchase the Aurora service, all that work goes away. All of that work disappears. And again, I think it's AWS Lambda, and this should freak you out. I think it's AWS Lambda, there's so many words. AWS Lambda is event-triggered compute. So event-triggered compute, basically what it is for all these developers, they can just call compute. They use Node.js scripts, and they say, take this thing, whether it's a picture, a video, or whatever, do this to it, output here. And then Lambda does it. It's just compute. Is it Windows? Is it Linux? Is it Unix? Is it something else? Who knows? Who the hell knows? It's just compute. So like literally, when you can just literally start selling compute, well then it's not just worrying about power supplies and motherboards, but then it's also, you don't have to worry about virus support. You don't have to worry about updates. You don't have to worry about all of these things that you used to have to worry about in the past. And that is where our world is moving with the whole IT industry, is more and more and more of this stuff that simply just works. And so again, if you start looking at it, you're like, well, Eli, we need IT professionals. You go, no, we need tech professionals. We need more developers. Again, I've been pushing development for a long time now. Again, I'm not a huge developer. I don't want to develop. I like to do YouTube videos now, right? But again, like if you want to be in the tech world, again, it's development. Because developers, if you know Ruby, if you know Python, if you know Go or any of those other development languages, all of these services that Amazon or Azure or anything like that provide, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier for you to use that than it is one of these old IT people to be able to figure out how the development world works. Again, when we start looking at things like developing products, again, IoT world, For the Internet of Things world, the big value proposition is actually being able to develop devices. So, whether you're using Arduino or Raspberry Pi or any of these other things, it's about being able to take the shields. So the shields are little external components that add functionality, temperature sensors, electricity stuff, that kind of stuff. So you take the Arduino, you put on the appropriate shields, you then go in with Python, you program the widget to do whatever the hell it does, and then you deploy it. Well, look, Eli, that's IT. Is it? Is it? You tell me in MCSE that you can just say, hey, go grab a couple of Arduino boards and some shields and do something in IoT, right? It's a different mindset. It's a different world. So it's still technology, but it's not the IT world that we've thought of coming from the past. And again, you keep going on with these things, like, there's more and more things like drones and all that kind of stuff. And again, drones are cool, drones are awesome, drones will change the world. You tell me what billable hours you can charge for a drone. Again, I know some people like repair motors of drones. Or Eli, look, Lewis talks about his friend who repairs drone motors. And again, but that's electronics. That's not IT, as you know. So the big issue with the IT industry and the IT profession is so many of these jobs that we have thought of as normal, as the core of the industry, are simply going away, and they don't need to be replaced by anybody. Now, there are people that say, well, Eli, what about all these cloud services? You're talking about Microsoft Azure and AWS and all this big stuff. But again, those jobs are for people with high-level skills. Not just your MCSE, not just your A+. These people have to know what the hell they're doing. Again, CCIEs, there's still a huge market for CCIEs, right? If you have your CCIE, you can go out there and get a job. But again, back in the day, you needed your CCNA to get a job. And then you needed to get your CCNP to get a job. And now you need to get your CCIE to make sure you can get a job, right? And these are the things that you have to be thinking about with the IT world as you're going to be going into it, and thinking about where is your position within the technology world, and is what you're thinking about doing actually going to get you to where you need to be. Because the other problem that you run into, again, and we talk about the timeline here, so again from 99 to 2016, well, the other thing you have to think about is, okay, let's look at 2016 to 2030. Where do you see this stuff going? Again, I used to talk about, and again, if you're going to get into the IT world, I still argue for the MCSE. I still think it's the best certification. But again, in 2030, do you think any of these jobs are still going to exist? I mean, look, this thing has more power than the original servers I worked on not that long ago. Can you not think that most of this stuff is going to be moving to the cloud, and then as it moves to the cloud, where is your job going to be? And so that's where I argue with a lot of this stuff, is that with IT, the IT core that we have thought about with IT is going away. And so if you want to be in the technology world, you have to be thinking about these other professions. Again, so if you look at Louis Rossmann's videos, he is an electronics professional. And again, so electronics may be a very good way to go, but you have to figure that out. Again, development works with information technology and all that kind of stuff. Development is definitely a good way to go. If you do want to deal with this high-level infrastructure things, then you just think about how high do I have to get in order to be working on that kind of stuff. Again, and that's when you plan and when you budget for what you're going to do, there's a difference between budgeting $3,000 in 2 months of your time to get your CCNA versus budgeting, $50,000 and however much to get your CCIE. These are the things that you have to be talking about. And so that's my thought, where I think the IT industry, as we have known up until this point in time, is dying. So then a lot of folks out there are like, well, Eli, you're just all misery. You're all just doom and gloom. Then what do we do? What do we do? Well, this is where I would say is basically you need to go out. And everybody asks how to become a technology professional, right? I get all these emails from people. Emails, on Skype conversation. Eli, I want to be a technology professional. How do I become? Do I need my MCSE? Do I need my A+? If you tell me to get my CCIE, I will do it, Eli. Anything to become a technology professional. And this is what I tell folks. This is the honest answer. What you need to do if you want to become a technology professional is you need to go out and you need to find problems that you're interested in solving. I don't care what the problem is. Is it education? Is it logistics? Is it transport? Is it whatever? Find a problem that you're actually interested in solving. Then find a technological solution to said problem. Then use technological solution to solve problem. Repeat 1,000 times. And that's what you do. That's what you do. That's what so many people don't understand is like there are so many opportunities out there in the technology world. But it's not this IT focused crap that people have been thinking of in the past. It's more finding what problems are people having and then trying to figure out how to solve the problems. So if you care about childcare or kids camps and that kind of thing, then you go to a childcare facility and you think, what problem are these people having? And so one of the problems may be is continuously tracking all the kids as they run around. So then you think, okay, so they say the problem that they're having is being able to track where kids are, do things like, so brutal, it's been so long, attendance, checking on attendance and that kind of thing. And so then you think, well, what if all the kids had like an RID card with an RFID tag on it? So anywhere the kid went, then the RFID thing would track them. And then you think, okay, well, then we have to figure out how RFID works, and then we have to figure out how the cards would work, and then we have to figure out the cost, and then we actually have to get this done. And look, you have just deployed a technology solution. And if you do it well, then you can go off and do that, right? There are so many interesting things. Again, like with Fitbits, there's one startup company I heard about when I was out in Lincoln, Nebraska. And again, where technology becomes part of everything. Where cows, right? Cows are very valuable. Cows are very valuable, and how much a cow weighs determines its value. So basically, you want the cow as plump as possible when it goes off to slaughter, right? So if it gets a little sick, if it gets dehydrated, for any number of reasons, cows can lose weight, and when they do lose weight, it costs farmers a lot of money. The problem is tracking the health of cows up until recently has been difficult. Basically, you look at a herd of 1,000 cows and go, I don't know, does anything look bad? And again, maybe you see one that actually looks bad, looks lame, but there could be others that are sick that you don't notice. So in the U.S., whenever you have cows for sale, they have to have tags on their ears to identify them. And so what this one company did is they decided to create a Fitbit for cows. And so since they have to have that tag, since they have to have the ear tag anyway, in that ear tag, they put a little Fitbit kind of like motion tracking device for the cow. And so as the cow's going along, it's collecting the information, and then whenever it gets close to an RF receiver, it's able to send that information, the RF receiver. That information then goes into a server that then is able to analyze all the movements of the cows, and then can show you that this particular cow is moving 30% less than the other cows are. So you should pull that cow out of the herd to have it checked by a vet to make sure it's doing okay. Again, that's an incredible value. There is a huge value there. That is a technological solution. That is a technological business. But again, do you use your MCSE to do that? Do you need a CCNA to do that? Or do you need to go out there and you need to figure out what technology you can put into what and, figure it out? Again, like with the drones, there's a huge industry for drones. But do you need an MCSE for drones, or do you need to understand FAA regulations and how to use the drone? Which drone can be used for what purposes, legally, in what situations. Again, if you're looking at drones, I have to tell you from drone usage, you need to know more about law than you need to know about electronics and circuitry for those things. Right? And these are the things that you have to think about going forward into the IT world. Because again, you look at like data recovery was such a valuable product for us. We made so much money off of data recovery before. But now when everything's on the cloud, you don't need data recovery. You can literally take a sledgehammer to my computer, and I'm not going to lose any data I care about. Genuinely, right? So all of these things, the networking stuff is going away. All of this stuff. And again, I get so many arguments. Well, people still need networking. People still need system admin. People still need... but you still have this huge market of people that now have experience that are also competing with you. And so that's where you need to be thinking about more being, I would say, technology professionals, going out there trying to find problems to solve, using technology to solve the problems and going from there. Like even like doing these YouTube videos, right? You realize like, well, again, because I get that from a lot of people. And I think doing these YouTube videos is almost like the perfect, it is the perfect example of the modern world. And people do not even realize it when they laugh at me. Oh, Eli, when did you stop being an IT professional? You're a YouTube professional now. And they don't even get it. They don't even realize what they're saying. Like the words are coming out of their mouth and they don't even realize what they're saying. Because when I started this business, let me explain to you my YouTube business. Back when this was Everyman IT LLC. So when I started doing this business, right, I was 2 months into a master's degree program, basically realized how worthless that was, and then decided to do my own startup company. And I was going to create online video classes, on-demand video classes, long form, to show people how to do all this stuff, right? And again, you're like, oh yeah, Eli, right, you use YouTube. No. Because when I looked at all the options at the time, back in 2009, there actually weren't any good easy options back then. YouTube maxed you out at 15 minutes per video. Not only that, the resolution was very poor, and it buffered to high hell and back. It buffered. This whole idea that somehow YouTube was better back in like 2007 is a bunch of crap. Because even in 2009, it was just miserable to use. I had business class internet connection everywhere. I had it at my house, I had it at my business, and even then it would just buffer. It just wasn't that good, right? So for me, and this is the perfect example, so when I started this business, and this actually shows you the migration. So when I started this business, I had to build my own server. So I went to a co-location facility and I rented server space. I rented 2 U's of server space plus my internet connection there. I then went out and I bought 2 Xeon servers with, I think, 8 gigs of RAM. One of the Xeon servers was the web server, basic Linux web server, Apache web server. And then the second server had Windows Server 2003 Web Edition, which I then installed Flash Media Server on top of. So I had to actually build a media server simply to be able to stream out content, right? Because there's a whole bunch of different types of streaming out there. There's progressive streaming and pseudo-progressive pseudo streaming, and then there's streaming. So in order to actually be able to do streaming, and so what streaming, something that you just take for normal now, is being able to jump between points in the video. So you can jump forward in the video or back. That actually requires a whole server service in order to do that. So I built that and I plugged that in, and then once I did, I started putting that online, and that was only the first issue. Because then you had to figure out how this was going to try to pay my bills. And so for me, I was going to do a membership site. So I had to build the WordPress site. I then had to use special plugins to do a membership thing, the whole 9 yards, and even to get that to work. Right? And that was before we even go into ads. So if you did try to do ads, like back then, if you were going to try to do ads on your videos, I think you needed something like 1 million views per month before the ad agencies would even pay attention to you, at all. And in order to do that, you actually had to go out and get all of those ad agreements. And then not only once did you have to get the ad agreements, but then you actually had to be able to take their ads and be able to plug that into your system. And all that coding and all that responsibility was all entirely on you. If their ads didn't play, you weren't getting paid, right? Think about all that was involved there. It was a real pain in the ass, and it really sucked. And I used Tremor Media back then because I found one media company that would deal with me, Tremor Media. But then they had like the worst ads. Like you think YouTube ads are bad? Oh my golly, Tremor's media ads were the most atrocious things you've seen in your life. Like there was this one for like a retirement community or whatever, that basically just looped. The damn thing just looped. So it would play the ad, and you get to the ad, into the ad, and then it would just freeze up. And then if you clicked anywhere on the ad, it would just loop itself. Like, this was all the stuff you had to deal with 2009, right? And so think about that. That's a lot of tech work. So back then, like 80% of my time was dealing with tech issues, figuring out multi-bit rate encoding and all kinds of stuff. And only 20% was really doing the videos. Well then, about a year after I set up those servers, then I found a hosted solution called Bits on the Run. I think they now do JW Player. They're now called JW Player. With Bits on the Run, instead of having my own hosted Exchange server and having to pay all that, so I had a monthly fee regardless, I could put all my videos on Bits on the Run. They then dealt with all the encoding, and they dealt with a platform and all that kind of stuff. I just had to pay money for it. And then, basically, when I couldn't make the business work after about a year and a half, YouTube, thankfully, emailed me right at that time and said, hey, you can put all your long-form content onto YouTube, and whatever. So I put it there, and then 8 months later, they allowed me to monetize, and now I make bank off of YouTube. But think about that. Think about that. And again, like every time people say, oh, Eli, you're not an IT professional more, you're a YouTube professional. Like, yeah. Let it sink in. Let it just sink in exactly what you just said. Because think about all the tech work that was required before. And again, if I had scaled, if I had my own Flash media servers and web servers and all that, if that had scaled, that would require one full-time IT person. Like right now, I stream out like 400,000 minutes of video a day, right? If I had to build that infrastructure, that would be multiple servers and multiple data centers all being able to communicate with each other. Like, that is at least one full-time tech just to maintain. Not only that, but for ad revenue and for all the ads that would play, I would need somebody that's all they did. I would need an ad or sponsorship salesperson to go out there and do that. Not to mention all the other work. So like this little company that you see right now, this little thing that you see right now, literally, if I had to build my own infrastructure and do this on my own, it would be at least 3 additional people. This would be a 4-person company. YouTube allows it to be just me and nobody else. And not only just me and nobody else, but even when I do try to hire people for it, it just is like a mess because I don't even, like, I so don't need other people to make this business run. And so that's where, again, you have a lot of people, it's wishful thinking. It's magical thinking. I believe that this stuff should matter, therefore it will. And again, you may be in those outliers. Again, like I say, Martin Lanner up in the Yukon territory, I'm sure he will be doing gangbusters for a while longer. He's going to expand in all kinds of weird-ass Canadian cities. So maybe there, computer repair and IT is going to swim along great. There's other areas that will swim along great. But for so many things, again, I mean, just think about it this way. Like, you know, like this is my iPhone, right? When does this break? When does this fail? The only time this fails is if I throw it on the ground and stomp on it. Then I have a problem. Again, as I say with my Mac, and you all may hate Mac with a passion, but realistically, I have 3 years, no wipes and reloads, no major problems with it. You know, again, I've had to hard reboot it, you know, a few times. And that's really about it. Because I talked about that before. I said, oh, I never have to reboot my Mac. And somebody said, you're a liar. You know, for updates, you have to reboot it. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. Right. Even with Windows, most of the problems with Windows is Microsoft's self-inflicted pain. Again, when you think about it, and a lot of people, you know, say, you know, Linux is the future. And again, we are getting to the point where Linux is really right about now. And again, if you follow my timeline, I used to talk about how Linux was worthless, and Linux, right about now, depending on what your workload is, you could migrate to Linux. But again, Linux is easy enough, a 6-year-old can install it. And then once it's installed, if you're using cloud services, what else do you need? And so much of that work that used to be IT professionals, again, in a company, they already have professionals doing a lot of things. And so with a lot of companies, like there's the operations manager. So the operations manager deals with facilities, deals with shipping, deals with the operations of the company. So again, in the picture I'm painting you, is it so much of a stretch to think at some point the assistant to the operations manager will be the one that's responsible for all of these different accounts, and you don't really need an IT person anymore. Again, you don't have to worry about the subnet masks. You don't have to worry about all of these things, right? And I think that's the world we're going into. I think that's the world we're basically in. And I think a lot of people, I talk with a lot of people trying to get jobs, and they're like, I don't understand how to get a job. And you're like, And a lot of people, and that's the thing, you know, a lot of people say, well, Eli, you go to the help desk. You know, all these new people, you got to start at the help desk. But again, where are you moving to? Again, help desk is a fine starter position. You should go to the help desk, but then you move to. In 2 years, what are you moving to? And before, it used to be you went from help desk to desktop support to junior to blah, blah, blah. And now you start looking at it, and you go from help desk to help desk 2, to help desk 3. When does your career get off the help desk? And that's what I say with talking to so many of you folks, is my content is supposed to be for professionals. It's supposed to be for people trying to get somewhere. If you're like, Eli, if I get a help desk job and I get medical and that's all I care about, I mean, hey, that's fine. Then go get a help desk job. But again, the question is I would say with anybody watching this video, is within 10 years of starting your career, you should have the reasonable expectation of a $100,000 a year salary. A reasonable expectation. Now again, there are reasons why it may not happen. You stop working because you have a kid. You stop working because you go to school. You stop moving up the career ladder because you find a job you like, and yes, you can make more money somewhere else, but this is what you like doing, right? Again, there is a difference between making an amount of money after 10 years because you've decided you're comfy with it versus there's nowhere further to go. Again, as I say with a lot of these computer repair people, Eli! Again, okay, let's say you make $40,000 a year off of computer repair. Well, you see, I win, Eli. How do you get to 45,000? How do you get to 50? How do you get to 75,000? And again, if you don't have a reasonable plan on how you can go from 40 to 75,000, that's not a career. That's a job for now. But again, that's a job that could then go away. Because you're like, well, I make $40,000 and I got my benefits and it's all pretty good, Eli. It's like, but if you don't have a path to go on, then what happens when your job gets eliminated? Because it will. Where do you go from there? Right? I want to go from $40,000 to $75,000. I don't want to go from $40,000 to whatever the hell minimum wage is now. And these are the things you have to really be thinking about. And so again, a lot of all this stuff is it's just definitions. It's what you call what you're doing. Again, you know, with Lewis is, I mean, and technically it's computer repair. Like, I guess you could call it computer repair, but like really that's not the best thing to call it. You know what I'm saying? Again, as I say with developers, you're like, well, look, they say the IT industry is booming. But again, what do they mean when they say the IT industry is booming? Yes, developers, go be a fucking developer. I have said that for a few years now. You want to make money, go be a developer. So yeah, tangentially, that's the IT industry. I mean, it is information technology. But is that what you're really thinking about in IT? Again, you're not going to get your A+, you're not going to get your MCSE, you're not going to get your CCNA, and then go develop iPhone apps. And that's a problem. Like, so many people, they just don't understand that there's all these different professions. I get so many, people come to talk with me and they say, Eli, I want to do computers. What does that mean? What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. I want to do computers doesn't mean anything. I want to be a developer. You say I want to be a developer, then you can have a discussion. Okay, what do you want to develop for? What are the problems you want to solve? Where do you want to go forward? You're like, Eli, I want to get into the IoT stuff. I say, okay, well then you deal with Arduino or Raspberry Pis or BeagleBoards or whatever options there are out there. You look at the shields, you learn Python, you learn all this kind of stuff. But again, IoT does not look like what IT used to be. Development does not look like what most people think IT is. Again, electronic component level motherboard repair. That's not what most people think IT is, right? And so you get all these people thinking, I'm going to do IT, and then they get out in the real world and they're absolutely screwed because the skills that they have, people don't want. And hey, you got $50,000 in debt and skills nobody wants and will ever want. Yay! And yet somehow, the trolls and the trash are gonna be leaving all kinds of nasty ass comments on this video. Eli, that's what's so funny. That's what's so funny. I'll get that with people. Eli, I'm about to earn my CCNA right now, and I'm gonna show you. And again, like I say, like with the CCNA, see there's a CCNA toilet paper back there. And I always point out that CCNA toilet paper because I want you to understand, I did not make that CCNA toilet paper. You know who gave me that CCNA toilet paper? Literally, there's a video on it way back when. That was a tech recruiter. A tech recruiter gave me that CCNA toilet paper. Again, don't listen to me. Listen to the fucking recruiter. I was INE hired me to go down and interview CCIEs and all that kind of stuff at their offices. So I spent 4 days down in Durham, North Carolina, down at INE's headquarters there, and interviewed, I don't know, like 12 CCIEs or something like that. Basically, they wanted to do an interview program where the idea of like humanizing CCIEs, humanizing technology professionals. So I did a lot of interviews down there with CCIEs, and so it was funny. So at the end of one of the days, we did a meetup, and so one of the number of the CCIEs came. We're just drinking beer, and eating pizza or whatever, and I was talking to them, and I said, okay, look. I get all this crap from my viewers all this time about where I crap on the CCNA and say it's basically worthless and you can't get a job with a CCNA. So, okay, you folks are CCIEs. You're in this job. You're in the Cisco environment, all that. Can anybody get a job with a CCNA, right? So I look around. There's a number of people there. Most of the CCIEs are basically just shaking their head like, just a CCNA? CCNA? Yeah. Not the MCSE with a CCNA, not a college degree with a CCNA, just a CCNA. So they're all shaking their head. And the one guy's like, no. Here's pizza. No. You can get a job with CCNA. You can get a job with CCNA. He's like, really? Because again, a lot of people think, again, I don't pull these ideas out of my ass, right? So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So I was like, wow, really? You really think you can get a job with a CCNA? He's like, yeah, well, yeah, you could get on a help desk with a CCNA. And then I just looked at him and was like, a high school graduate can get on a help desk. He's like, true. I'd agree with that. But a CCNA helps. He was like, oh, right. But that's the thing. We were like, you can get a job with CCNA. Like I'm sitting there with CCIEs in like the heart of Cisco land, and they're like I say, most of them are like, yeah, no, you can't do much with it. And the one guy's like, you could get a help desk job. It's like, if you speak English well and have a high school degree, you can get a help desk job. Yeah, well, true. Not surprised, like, right? But again, that's where with so many of you folks, you just have to, like, who are you getting the advice from? Who's telling you? Is it your mom? Is it your dad? Is it the politicians? Because it's just so sad. I just see so many people trying to get in the IT world because they somehow, there's this idea where roads paved with gold, cotton candy, and fairy dust, and all this amazing stuff. And again, I do have to say, at one time, it was a lot better. At one time, the IT profession was a lot better for lower level people. Again, I was running around at 23 years old with a direct line to the travel department. I was doing $500,000 build outs. It was a nice life. They sent me off to CCNA training, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon in CCNA training, this little old guy would toddle through with all his little ice cream bars or whatever. It was a great time. Time doesn't exist anymore. You want that? Go be a developer. Again, which is tangentially IT, but is it really the IT that you think about? And that's where with the words, I would argue with a lot of this stuff, it's not. And so that's what you have to look at with your profession. Is what I want you to look at is not just what's the first job you can get, but what is your actual career progression. Because if you get to help desk, and then you can't see where you get past help desk, that doesn't work. That's not a career path, right? I want you to start thinking about What problems do you see in the world? And if you want to be a technology professional, then figure out how to solve those problems in a technological manner. Again, a lot of people are like, oh, Eli, you're not an IT professional anymore. Ha ha. But what do I see? What is the big problem that I see? Me, personally, the big problem that I see is that so many professionals and decision makers do not put technology into the proper context. That basically they get lied to, they lie to themselves, they hear the echo chamber, and then that's what sends them down a very bad road. So when you laugh and you say, you're not an IT professional anymore, am I not? I am providing a solution, I am providing a technological solution to a problem that I see. I happen to use a very nice Sony camera and a MacBook Pro and YouTube in order to solve the problem. And that's how I solve the problem. You may see that, I don't know, a dog fitness app. Oh my golly, there's too many fat dogs on the planet. And so you create some kind of IoT or IOE dog collar that then communicates with who the hell knows what, and you fix the problem that way. Or you see that hunger, food distribution is too much of a problem, and so you figure out the problem that way. So you go out there and you find the problem and you solve it with technology solutions, and that's what so many people aren't doing. And then you really have to think about who's giving you advice and why they're giving you advice. One, I talk about this a lot in Failed Normal, I have been screaming about the liars. And here's the reality. In our modern world, the reason right now we're in the election cycle, and the reason I believe that Trump is a GOP nomination is because so many people lie to you. Your parents lie to you. Your teachers lie to you. Your politicians lie to you. All these people that you're supposed to be able to go to and get good advice from, they are lying to you because they are weak. They don't understand how the world works, and so they are giving you answers to make themselves feel better, when in reality, it's probably not the right answer, right? Because again, Obama, came out, said, everybody needs to know programming. And here's the thing. Now, Eli, what's the problem with that? What's the problem with Obama saying everybody needs to know programming? We don't know how our retirement accounts work. We don't know basic economics. Most people don't understand what the difference between a stock, a bond, equity, commodity, any of that stuff is. And that will control up to 30 years of our life. If you retire at 65 and live till 95, a third of your life will be determined based on how much you understand our financial systems and economics. And yet, that's not getting pushed in school. Health. Again, if you look at the healthcare costs in the United States, so much of our healthcare costs are devoted towards preventable issues. Exercise, eating right, and stress reduction would just, if you want to talk about shrinking healthcare spending, that would be a massive thing. But again, is living a decent, healthy life, that's not part of our system. Again, the Second Amendment, whether you like the Second Amendment, whether you're against the Second Amendment, we don't teach our kids how to shoot weapons in school. And if the Second Amendment is our God-given right, apparently, that seems odd. And so what I'll say is when they say, like, every kid should know programming, what you have to think about is, but look at all these other skills, all these things that they should. The reason that they say that is it makes a good sound bite. The reason that they say that is it makes them sound impressive. It makes them sound good. It makes them sound cool without them actually having to do anything. Look, I'm promoting technology education. Right? So think about that. And then also with people, think about the people that aren't necessarily trying to lie to you, don't necessarily have a vested interest in lying to you, but they just happen to do it because they're not thinking about the wider scope. Again, like I say, with that one person, I'm sure that person's a fine person. But again, 16 years of military experience, 4 years as some kind of special agent or whatever, another 4 or 6 years in the reserves, living in Washington, D.C., and then says, oh, I went to a master's degree program or whatever, and I got into the cybersecurity industry. And you're like, you're not a 22-year-old. You're not a 20-year... It's not the same story. And even with the guy saying, well, and now I'm having my nephew go through the training that I went through, and I'll be able to get him a job. Again, you're in DC, you're in a hub of that particular technology industry, and you can tell your nephew exactly what is needed in the industry right this moment, and you can open doors for your nephew. Again, and the problem is you will hear that nephew's success story. You will hear this 22-year-old went and did X, Y, or Z and then was making $100,000 in 2 years. You don't see where, that's the whole thing that I ask you folks, is it replicatable? Is that something that you honestly believe everybody listening to the story can do? And again, I would say with most of you folks, it's not, right? So those are my thoughts. The final thing that I would say, because I see I'm getting to the 2 hour mark. I was a little worried here. I do have to say I was a little worried. I was like, I have all this extra stuff on my iPad on things to talk about. I was like, ooh, will I have enough to talk about today? But apparently I did. The final thing I'll have you think about if you really want to get in the IT profession, right, these technology professions, is really think about relocating to an area where that technology is heavily used. Again, with a lot of you folks who want your CCNAs and all that crap. Here's the thing, Research Triangle. Booyah for the win, right? So again, I&E was down in Research Triangle. I talked with a lot of people in the Research Triangle. Cisco's down there. And again, it's a huge area for Cisco. I met a guy there. I interviewed a guy there who literally 8 years previous, he had been working in a bar as a bartender. There was somebody that came in with like some fancy car. He said, how do you do it? And the guy said he was like a Cisco person. And so literally he went out, he got his CCNA, he got hired by Cisco, he worked his ass off, he got 2 CCIEs, apparently this is a thing, and then when I asked him, like, why he didn't get a 3rd CCIE, because he said, well, in the Cisco world, like 3 CCIEs is like too much. Like that's just like being arrogant. Like, no, 2 CCIEs is the right number. But again, he was in the Research Triangle, he got a CCNA there, he got into the whole Cisco cycle, and then he moved up. Again, his story is not going to be the same story as somebody in Atlanta or somebody in Rapid City or something like that. So if you want to do development, you want to do startup, get to Silicon Valley. If you want to do Cisco or network or any of that kind of stuff, think about Research Triangle. If you want to be in the financial, think about New York. And so again, that would be one of the other big things that I would say is just remember geographically, there are different opportunities in different locations depending on where you go. Again, if you really want to do computer, I want to do computer repair, that's all I want to do. Well, again, Martin Lehner, he owns Orange Computer Company up in the Yukon. Call him up and ask if he needs to hire an employee. Then you can get to live in the Yukon. I wouldn't want to do it, but hey, apparently he does. It's nice up there. So those are my thoughts on the death of the IT profession. And the rest of it, again, as I say, I don't ask for much from anybody. I don't care if you thumb up. I don't care if you thumb down. If you leave a comment, just make sure it's all polite and nice. I would ask, there are sponsor links below this video. If you could click on the sponsor links, that would be a beautiful thing. That helps pay all the bills and all that kind of stuff. And with that, we will call it a day. And we have officially ended the first Daily Blob in a very long time. I look forward to seeing you folks for the next one.